You know, when two countries take each other to court, you expect a huge legal battle, right? A whole showdown with lawyers, tons of evidence, and eventually some kind of verdict. What you definitely don't expect is for the case to just vanish. But that's exactly what happened with this one. So the big question is, how does that even happen? How does a lawsuit between two entire nations just get wiped off the books at the World Court? Well, that's what we're here to figure out. We're going to dive into this little historical mystery and piece it all together using the original documents. And this is where the story ends. It's 1954, and a formal order comes down. The case between France and Lebanon is officially struck from the record. I mean, totally wiped clean. No verdict, no judgment, no winner, no loser. It's just gone. To solve this, we've got to put on our detective hats. We're going to sift through the actual correspondence and legal papers filed way back when. We're going to reconstruct the entire chain of events that led to this case's very strange disappearance. So, to really get to the bottom of this, we have to rewind the clock. The case was officially dropped in 1954, but our story really gets started almost a year before that, back in the summer of '53. All right, let's meet our main players. In one corner, you've got the government of France, and in the other, the government of Lebanon. And let's just say they had a pretty serious disagreement on their hands. And this document right here is where it all started. You can think of this as the first shot fired in the legal battle. It's the official application from the French government to the International Court of Justice, or ICJ, formally kicking off a lawsuit against Lebanon. So what was this big fight all about? At its heart, it was a business dispute. France was stepping in to protect a French-owned company, the Beirut Electricity Company. They argued that Lebanon had just decided to change the rules of the game all by itself, which, they claimed, broke a specific agreement the two countries had signed back in 1948. France was basically telling the court, hey, Lebanon broke its promise. Now, once a case like this gets filed at the World Court, it's like this giant, formal machine slowly starts to turn. The wheels of international law, they move deliberately, but they definitely move. And you can see that process kicking into gear right here. France files on August 11th. Just a few days later, the court officially informs Lebanon. A month after that, Lebanon appoints its lawyer. By October, the court is already setting the schedule. So far, this looks like any other standard international case. Okay, so there are two key legal terms to know here, the memorial and the counter-memorial. Think of it this way. The memorial is France's opening argument. It's this massive document where they lay out their entire case. The counter-memorial is Lebanon's chance to fire back, to tell their side of the story. These are pretty much the main weapons for each side. So, the timeline is locked in. The legal chess match has officially begun. France delivers its huge written argument, the memorial, right on schedule in January. And now, all eyes are on Lebanon. They have until April 28th to file their big defense. The clock is ticking. Everybody in the legal world is just waiting for Lebanon to submit their counter-memorial. But behind the scenes, something totally different is going on, something nobody saw coming. Now have a look at this document. It's a letter from Lebanon's representative to the court, and it's dated March 29th, just about a month before their big legal brief is due. But what's in this letter is a huge curveball. It has nothing to do with legal arguments. And this right here, this is the smoking gun. Lebanon's agent writes that the two countries have reached an amiable settlement, a friendly deal. And because of this deal, he says, filing that huge legal defense would now be, and this is his word, pointless, inutile. This is the exact moment the entire case pivots. So what was really going on? Well, it turns out this whole public legal battle was just one part of the story. On a second, much quieter track, French and Lebanese diplomats were negotiating. The pressure of the court case was actually the thing that forced them to finally hammer out a solution on their own. Once that secret deal was in the bag, the rest of the court stuff was really just a formality. All that was left to do was to let the court know that the fight was over. And this is France officially pulling the plug. They got the deal they wanted, so their agent writes to the court to say they renounce pursuing the procedure. In other words, we're dropping the case. They formally ask for it to be struck from the court's list. And this really says it all, doesn't it? The case goes from being an active dispute on the world's most important legal stage to being completely removed, as if it never even happened. And here's the final confirmation, a short, simple telegram from the court's registrar. The mystery is solved. The case didn't just vanish into thin air, it was withdrawn because it had already served its purpose. It got the two countries to the negotiating table. So, what's the big takeaway from this dusty, forgotten case from the 1950s? Well, it actually pulls back the curtain on a really fascinating and often overlooked part of how international law really works. The main lesson here is that international courts aren't just verdict machines. Sometimes their most important job is to create the right conditions for conflicts to get solved without a verdict ever being needed at all. So, why does all this matter? Because it shows that filing a lawsuit isn't always about winning in court. Sometimes just the threat of a ruling is the push countries need to finally sit down and negotiate seriously. The court's strict deadlines give a structure and a timeline to those talks. In this instance, the real goal wasn't a legal victory for France. It was a new deal with Lebanon. The court was simply the tool they used to get there. And that leaves us with a bigger question to chew on. When we see countries suing each other, are they always fighting for a legal win? Or are they sometimes just using the world's biggest stage to force a conversation that couldn't happen any other way?